Hey, I'm Katie, occupational therapist, health and wellness coach, and a professional deep breather who doesn't always practice what she preaches. Welcome to the Mom Refill. You fill everyone else's cups, your kids, your partners, your bosses. Now it's time to fill yours. Each episode, we're digging into the real science behind stress, burnout, and nervous system regulation, made for working moms who don't have an extra hour, just a few minutes, maybe. Let's get you refilled. Today, we are talking about stress. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and you'll see why as we go through today's episode. So, to start, my question to you is, have you ever felt like you are at the end of your rope, like you're going to explode from all of the stress? I think we all have felt this way at one point or another. I have this vivid memory of when I was deep in burnout and my daughter came home from school and told me she forgot her water bottle at school. That simple statement put me over the edge and made me feel so overwhelmed and like I was exploding. Reflecting back, I know it was no big deal because, hey, we have other water bottles. But because my nervous system was in chronic fight or flight at this point, let me demonstrate with a balloon. For those of you on YouTube, you can see this yellow balloon I have. For those listening, I will explain. So stressors are anything that turns on our stress response, right? It's the traffic you're sitting in, the emails you have to respond to, the boss that is down your throat for something you need to get done. So if you think about all the stressors you have, for every breath of air I blow into this balloon is a stressor that's going on. So I'm going to start blowing it up, and I want you to think about all the stressors you have in your life, right? So for every stressor, the balloon is inflating. It's getting bigger and bigger. Let me add a few more. The grocery shopping I need to do, the permission slips that need to be filled out, the school shopping that needs to be done. Here we go. All right, so the balloon is getting bigger. And if we continued to add the stressors into this balloon, at some point it's going to pop. And I promise you, I'm not going to pop it right here on the air. But you can imagine that this balloon's going to explode, just like I exploded when my daughter forgot her water bottle at school, because I had this full balloon of stressors and nowhere for the air to go. So your body, when that stress response is turned on and on and on, the stressors pile up and there's nowhere for it to go. So that's when we get to that explosion scenario, that overwhelm, that complete breakdown of our stress. So we need to figure out ways to get the air to leave the balloon. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as just letting out the air like I did in the balloon just then, but I'm going to teach you some really easy ways to do it later. So today, we're really talking about how to tell our brain we are safe so we can turn off the stress response and also prevent us from getting to that stage of explosion. So let's talk about what happens when our brain perceives a stressor, which could be a tornado coming right towards your house or just an email from your boss that you have to respond to immediately. These are two very different threats, but our brain makes the same response. So going back to the question I started with at the beginning of this episode, have you ever felt like you were at the end of your rope? Like one more thing, one more email, one more, Mom, where's my? You're going to actually explode. If you nodded, good. That means your nervous system is working exactly the way it's supposed to. And I know that's not what you expected me to say, but here's the thing. Before we talk about fixing anything, I want you to understand what's actually happening in your body when you feel that way. Because most of us have been told that stress is just a mindset problem, but it's not. It's a physiology problem. And once you see the mechanics, a lot of it stops feeling like personal failing and starts feeling like, oh, this is just what bodies do. So here's the sequence. It happens in about a fraction of a second, and it happens the same way whether the threat is a bear or a bad email. Step 1, your brain perceives the threat. It doesn't matter if it's real or not, it just registers danger and moves. Step 2, that perception flips a switch called the sympathetic nervous system. This is your body's gas pedal. Once it's on, a cascade starts. Your adrenal glands release norepinephrine and epinephrine, which is why your heart rate jumps, your breathing gets shallow and fast, and your blood pressure climbs. That's not random. That's your body diverting resources away from digestion, away from rest functions, towards your muscles and your heart in case you need to run or fight. Step 3, and this is the part most people don't know, at the same time, your hypothalamus and your HPA axis, that's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, don't worry about memorizing it, releases a hormone that tells your adrenal cortex to pump out cortisol. We've all heard about cortisol, right? Cortisol is a slower acting hormone than adrenaline, but it's the one that sticks around. It's the one that keeps you wired at 11 p.m. after a day that wasn't that bad. And your body responds to all of this in one of 4 ways. You've probably heard of fight or flight, but there are actually 4 stress response patterns, and I want you to listen for which one is yours, because we're going to come back to this later in the episode. The first stress response is fight. That's when your stress makes you push back, get sharp, get angry, right? Snapping at your partner over something small or yelling at your kids. It's not a character flaw. That's activation looking for an exit. Then we have flight. This is when stress makes you want to escape or avoid. That could look like burying yourself in work or suddenly reorganizing the pantry at 9 p.m. instead of sitting still. The third response is freeze. This is when stress makes you shut down or go blank. Your mind just empties mid-meeting, mid-conversation. And the last one is fawn. And this one's sneaky. And I think a lot of working moms here actually live in this stress response more than they realize. It's when stress makes you people please to stay safe, saying yes when every part of your body is screaming no. Now, none of these are wrong. They're not weaknesses. They're just your particular nervous system's go-to strategy for handling activation. Now, here's where I want to bring in some outside science because I think it reframes everything. There's a neuroscientist named Robert Sapolsky who wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And the whole premise is this. A zebra's stress response is identical to yours. Cortisol spikes, heart rate jumps, the whole cascade. But the second the lion gives up the chase, the zebra's body shuts it off. It shakes it out, and it goes back to grazing like nothing happened. Humans don't do that. We can trigger the same exact full body response over an email that's sitting in our inbox, a conversation we're dreading having tomorrow, a thing we said 3 years ago that we're still cringing about at a red light. And because the threat isn't something we can outrun or fight, it's abstract, it's ongoing, it's a slow drip, the response doesn't get the signal to turn off. It just stays on. And that's not a discipline problem. That's not you needing to manage your time better. That's a body doing exactly what it evolved to do, aimed at a threat it was never built to handle. And that's really the whole problem we're solving in this episode. It's not that you're stressed. It's that the stress response gets turned on and never gets the signal that it's safe to turn back off. So let's sit with that for a second. What happens if that signal never comes? If the stress response turns on and turns on and turns on and just never gets the "we're safe" message? This is the part I think gets skipped over in a lot of wellness content because it's not the fun, actionable part. But I think it's really the most important part because once you understand what chronic stress is doing to your body in real time, the tools we talk about stop feeling optional. So let's start with the brain, since that's where the whole cascade begins. Remember cortisol, the slower stress hormone that sticks around after the adrenaline wears off. When cortisol stays elevated for a long stretch, not hours, but weeks and months, it starts to change the physical structure of your brain. There's a part of your brain called the hippocampus. That's your memory and learning center. And chronic cortisol exposure is linked to it actually shrinking. That's not a metaphor. Research on long-term high cortisol shows it's associated with reduced hippocampal volume. That's your why did I walk into this room moment, your trouble focusing, your patience running out faster than it used to. That's not you getting worse at your job or worse at motherhood or getting older. That's a brain that's been marinating in stress hormones without a break. And it doesn't stop at memory. Chronic stress is linked to changes in brain regions tied to memory and mood regulation, and those changes are connected to depression and anxiety. So the irritability, the flatness, the anxious loop you can't turn off at night, that's not separate from the physical stress response. It's downstream of it. Now let's go to the body because cortisol doesn't stay in your head. Nearly every cell in your body has cortisol receptors. Your heart, your gut, your brain, which is why chronic stress doesn't show up just as one symptom. It shows up everywhere, all at once, in ways that don't always look like stress on the surface, and why so many of our doctor's appointments for various ailments can be linked to chronic stress. Your cardiovascular system takes a direct hit. Chronic stress raises the risk of cardiovascular disease by increasing blood pressure, causing irregular heartbeats, and damaging blood vessels over time. Your immune system also takes a hit, and this one surprises people because we assume stress just makes us run down. Chronic stress actually suppresses immune function, which raises the risk of infection and can worsen conditions like heart disease and high blood pressure. That's why you get sick the week after the big deadline, not during it. Your body held the line as long as it could, and the immune system was one of the things it deprioritized to do it. And then there's inflammation. Chronic stress drives ongoing inflammation in the body, which is tied to conditions like diabetes and a long list of issues we don't usually think to connect back to a stressful season of life. I want to be really clear about why I'm telling you all of this. It's not to scare you. It's to make the case that this isn't vanity work. This isn't self-care in the bubble bath sense. When I talk about completing the stress cycle, I'm talking about something with a direct line to your memory, your mood, your heart, and your immune system. Your body is keeping a running tab, and the tools we're about to walk through aren't extras. They're the thing that actually closes it out. So with that in mind, let's talk about what works and what doesn't work. So if the stress response needs a signal to turn off, what actually sends that signal? Let's talk about what doesn't first, because I think this is where most of us have been set up to fail. Picture a typical evening. You finally got a minute. The kids are down or close to it. And what do you reach for? Maybe you scroll your phone for 10 minutes or an hour, telling yourself you're disconnecting. Maybe you run through tomorrow's to-do list in your head, the work emails, the meal plan, calling your friend back you've owed a call for 2 weeks. Maybe somebody's told you to think positive or take a bubble bath. None of that is bad necessarily, but none of it is actually completing anything. Here's why. Your body doesn't measure whether your circumstances have changed. It measures whether you physically signaled the danger has passed. Crossing an item off a list doesn't do that. Thinking positive thoughts while your shoulders are still up around your ears doesn't do that. Honestly, scrolling usually adds a fresh little hit of stimulation on top of what's already there, which is the opposite of a signal to stand down. This is the core idea behind a book that I love by Emily and Amelia Nagoski called Burnout. Their argument is that burnout isn't caused by having too much on your plate. It's caused by going through stressful events over and over without ever completing the biological stress cycle. without your body ever getting the "we're safe now" signal, even after the actual stressor is gone. Think about that for a second because it reframes a lot. You can solve the problem, right? You can send the email, get through the hard conversation, survive the meeting, and still be carrying the stress response in your body hours later. The stressor and the stress are not the same thing. You can remove the first and still be stuck in the second. And that's the trap with the just relax advice. It's actually aimed at the stressor. Fix the thing, check the box, calm your thoughts down. But your nervous system isn't listening to your thoughts. It's listening to your body. And until your body gets the physical signal that it's safe, it's going to keep running at the same program. The racing heart, the shallow breath, the cortisol still circulating hours later. So the real question isn't, how do I think my way out of this? It's, what actually tells my body the threat is over? And that's not a mystery. That's real science on exactly which physical actions do that. And that's what we're going to get into next. I'm going to give you 4 tools that are all research backed that end the stress cycle and turn off the stress response. All of these can be done relatively quickly and in the middle of your day or at the end of your day. Anytime is good to do these. You don't have to do all 4. You can pick one and start there. And I like to give options because I think it's important to pick the ones that fit into that moment, that day of what you need. So I call it your toolbox. So this is a toolbox of 4 tools that you can pick out when you're stressed and need to turn off the stress response, which is honestly every day for us humans, especially us working moms. So number 1 is movement. So if you think back to the stress response that we talked about, our body gets a buildup of stress hormones that need to go somewhere. Moving our body physically discharges those stress hormones that were released because it wasn't a threat that we were outrunning, which would use up those stress hormones, right? Instead, it's an email that we're trying to respond to or a permission slip that we forgot to fill out. That's not something we can outrun. So we need to do something with those stress hormones so that they don't build up in our system and keep the detriment happening to our body. So movement is a great way to turn off our stress response. And like I said, we don't need an hour in our day to move our bodies to make this work. You can do 5 minutes of intentional movement for this to work. So some ideas could be taking a walk after dinner with your family. You can make it a whole family event, walking for 5 or 10 minutes down the street. It could be a dance party after breakfast. My kids love a dance party, so put on your favorite music and everybody dances. Everybody gets the benefit of that movement. It could look like a 5-minute chair yoga routine in the middle of your day, or maybe just sitting down before going to bed and stretching in whatever way feels good. All of those are types of movement that will turn off your stress response. Now, I always like to tell people when you're looking at movement to turn off the stress response, to be aware of certain movements will turn on our stress response, such as high intensity interval training or boot camp style workouts. Those are workouts that are great for your body physically, for building strength and cardiovascular capacity, but not necessarily going to turn off the stress response. So think about what movement might feel good to turn off the stress response and end that stress cycle. Number 2 is breath work. Breath work is highly, highly effective, and it's very quick. I'm going to teach you 2 of my favorite breathwork techniques, but there are so many out there. So if you don't love these, try something else. So my first one that I love is the 4-7-8 breathing. In this technique, you inhale through your nose for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 7, and you exhale through your mouth for a count of 8. You do 4 rounds. It takes about a minute to do it. And that's all you have to do. This one I love for right as I'm going to sleep at night, especially if I'm extra anxious or stressed. I do this and it helps me fall asleep. Or if you wake up at 3 a.m. with your mind racing, it's a great way to get back to sleep. It's also something you can do at any time of your day. Let's try it together real quick here. Okay? You can close your eyes if you're not driving. If you're somewhere where you're comfortable closing your eyes, do that. Start by just taking a deep breath out through your mouth and then breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for a count of 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe out your mouth for a count of 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can pause me here to do the other 3 rounds of this to see how it feels. The next technique is called the physiological sigh or cyclic sighing. This is when we take 2 nasal inhales and 1 long exhale through the mouth. So it looks like this. So 2 breaths through your nose and a long exhale through your mouth. You can do that for a minute or 2, so time yourself, and it will very quickly calm down your nervous system and turn off the stress response. In fact, a Stanford study found that repeating this pattern for 5 minutes reduced cortisol and improved mood more than mindfulness meditation of the same length. That's really cool. So if you can do it for 5 minutes at the end of your day, I think it would be very, very helpful. Number 3, social connection. This is a really important way to that you can turn off the stress response, and something that I think as moms and working moms, we don't always make time for, right? We don't have time to go out with the girls and have a girls' night. We don't have time to chat on the phone with our best friend who lives across the country anymore. But when we connect socially in a positive way, it provides a co-regulation of the nervous systems for you and the person you're interacting with. And again, this doesn't mean you have to go out for 5 hours on a Friday night with your girlfriends. This could be a 10-minute phone call with your best friend, or 5 minutes, or even chatting a coworker about what are they doing over the weekend. All of that social connection helps calm our nervous system and turn off the stress response. And the last technique is through laughter or creativity. So laughter, when we are truly laughing, our brain cannot have the stress response activated. We are not safe enough to allow our body to let go in the way that when we laugh, deeply and to the point where we can't see because we're crying, or we can't breathe because we're laughing so hard. Laughter is a great way to turn off our stress response. And I think that's why they say laughter is the best medicine. So laughter is a great way to turn off our stress response. So if you're going to scroll some funny videos. If you're going to turn on the TV, turn on a comedy special. Find ways to laugh in your day. And on the same note, creativity is a great way to release stress. This doesn't mean you have to make a big art project. This could be being creative in the kitchen where you might already be making dinner, or being creative with your kids after school making some sort of craft, or being creative in journaling at night, right? So it doesn't have to be a big time-consuming activity. It can be something small. So to recap, we have to actively turn off the stress response. This is a cycle. It's not a one-time fix. Try one of the techniques we talked about each day to turn off your stress response. And if you need more ideas, or you want to dive deeper on your personal needs around stress, book a free 30-minute call to build a personal stress recovery plan. You can book it on my website at www.katiecooperwellness.com, and I'll also put the link in the show notes. That's it for today's refill. If this episode gave you even one thing to try, do me a favor, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you've got 30 seconds, leave a quick review. It genuinely helps other exhausted moms find the show. You can also find me on Instagram at Katie Cooper Wellness for more in-between episodes. Take care of you. I'll see you next time.